All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back at it again with another info dump from Kuro Games regarding Wuthering Waves 3.5. And that is, of course, going to be the attributes and the weapon types for the two new characters, Yangyang, Xuanling, and of course, Suisui. And when it comes to these two units, I think it was kind of obvious at a glance what one of their characteristics was going to be. I think we all knew she was going to be a rectifier user after we saw her rectifier floating around in gameplay. And of course, I think we all knew that she was going to be a sword user after we saw the sword that she was using quite a lot in her gameplay. And I think the main sort of like discovery for a lot of people is, well, the actual attributes that these two characters are going to have. And I'm going to be entirely real with you. One of them should come as a big surprise. The other one, maybe not so much. And so what we're going to be doing today is, of course, going through what I think these two characters are going to have when it comes to A, their kit, B, their weapon options, and of course, the big question over here, whether or not a player should reasonably start saving for them, you know, in wait for their kit review to see if they're actually going to be a good add to their account. Because there tends to be a bit of, well, you can tell from certain animations that have already been released, thankfully, due to that Tekken guy, right? Who came out with that amazing leak a couple of days ago, you know, officially from Kuro Games. We can kind of tell from the animations over here what their kits are actually going to do. And so we're going to use that to guide our discussion and then move forward from there. All right, so first things first, we're going to get ourselves started with the first unit over here, and that is going to be Yangyang Xuanling. And she's obviously going to be the first person up, available in 3.5, because she's the first person that got drip marketed. It's likely going to be 2 weeks of her, followed by 2 weeks of Suisui. And for the animations that we've seen over here, I think all of us are surprised by the fact that she's Havoc. I think a lot of people thought maybe Fusion, likely Arrow, because of like the birds, the wind, all of that. But no, ladies and gentlemen, she is Havoc. Yeah, I don't think anybody saw that shit coming. But what's clear is that from the rotation that we've seen and the animation quality that she has and the rotation length, she's a DPS. From the stuff that we saw over here, it takes her like close to like 11, 12, 13 seconds to get off all of these attacks. And if you think this is a sub DPS, if you think this is a support, I don't know what to tell you. Like, does this look like a sub DPS? Does this look like a support to you? Does this look like, or does this look like a DPS's kit? I'm gonna go with the assumption that she's a fucking DPS because she's flying around on swords in the air and then like summoning birds and shit, and they're like hitting the enemy. Yeah, this just looks like a kit where you build up a bunch of resources and then end with your ultimate. And then you nuke the enemy. Yeah, that's personally where I think it's coming from. But I think the biggest realization for a lot of people is the Havoc makes no fucking sense here. However, when we look at the DPS characters that we've had released in the game, it's pretty clear that Havoc is the one attribute that has gotten literally zero attention since the release of Frolova way back in Wuthering Waves 2.5. Actually, literally, the 7 out of 10 incident about a year ago. So it's about a year since we had our last Havoc DPS character. And I think the main take that most people are thinking is that, well, she's going to be a Havoc DPS, and we've just had the Glacio negative status DPS. We just had the Fusion negative status DPS, and of course, well, we haven't had the Havoc one yet. We all know there's a Havoc Bane applier over here, but this character's not really a DPS. And so a lot of people are probably under the impression, well, Yangyang SP Xuanling, if she's going to be Havoc, there's probably a good case to speculate that she's going to be Havoc Bane oriented. Otherwise, like, yeah, she could just be any of the other random damage types, but that wouldn't really make much sense, right? Especially when we see like a clear theme over here. We see a very, very, very clear theme over here that they're leaning a lot more into negative statuses, and that seems to be a big sort of shift that's happening in the game. And you want to know what I have some money on? We're probably going to have the Electro negative status character released as one of the other characters in Mengzhou. I wouldn't be too surprised about that one either. In this unit, I guess that's just going to be the person. Because they could also be like a Liberation damage dealer. Chisa kind of already fills in that role, kind of sub DPS-wise. And support-wise. Could also be that too. On top of also potentially being Havoc Bane, she's probably going to have a secondary damage type as well. right? We all know Hiyuki is Glacial Chafe, but then also deals Liberation damage. Imith is Fusion Burst, but then also deals Liberation damage. So there's likely going to be some other sort of like damage typing built in when it comes to her kit. And that also means, well, you're going to have to take a look at all of the available weapon options for sword users. And this is the great thing about swords. I think swords might actually have almost every damage type covered in the game. Because guess what? You have EOG. And we all know that EOG, when it comes down to like brass tacks, every single sword DPS has been able to use this. Imith can use this and clear. Hiyuki can use this and clear. But most people never use EOG on those characters because they end up pulling that character's signature. But EOG is just so good on these teams that the only sword DPS that can't really use it well is Cardathea. And that's because Cardathea scales off HP, and so she can't use any of these base stats over here. So yeah, that's the only character that can't use this is the one that benefits nothing from the weapon's base stats, and it benefits nothing from the weapon's stat effect. So that's why Cart's like the only DPS that can't use it. But this is also the other thing. You also got to take a look at every other sword that exists in the game as well when it comes to damage typing. If Xuanling, for some reason, does resonant skill damage, well, guess what? In what universe would this somehow not work on her? So resonant skill damage, if Xuanling does it, it's going to be covered in some way. Basic attack damage. She's not going to get a full buff from this, right? Well, you can get up to 60% basic attack damage. Wait a second. Oh my god. Yeah, you can get up to 60% basic attack damage. Or sorry, 30% over here. Sorry, I was looking at it at R5. That's there as well. This one's pretty dog shit. You're probably not going to want the ER from this thing, but it exists. Maybe she'll use Laser Shearer, but this would be the most brain damage thing I've ever seen. Maybe she's a Laser Shearer user. Who knows? But as you can see, right? You've got three main options. This one gives you heavy attack. Casting Echo skill within 10 seconds after casting an intro skill or a basic attack grants one stack of Bamboo Cleaver, which grants 30% heavy attack damage. I think every person in the game can activate this. Yeah, I think every person can at least activate the first 30% heavy attack damage effect. Oh, and I guess it buffs Echo skill teams in the backgrounds too. So that's like already there. You got Resonant skill, and you also got basic. The only real sort of like damage type that isn't covered here, guys, is Liberation. Because Imith is the Liberation sword damage dealer. You're not really getting that much of a bonus over here, right? Unless you're Imith herself. And then Hiyuki's weapon is also very, very, very specific to her because you got to be able to apply Glacial Chafe. But again, like I said before, you've always got EOG, and then you've got three other damage types covered with some of the basic weapons. Or, sorry, not the basic weapons, with some of the other existing signatures. So swords are always a buff. If a DPS character can use a sword, that at a baseline is a massive, massive fucking advantage for them. Because you've always got this, and of course, maybe some tertiary other options that you can use. So this over here, I think at a baseline, Kuro's making a good decision by having Yangyang Xuanling as this sort of like introductory unit to the region. Because as far as I'm concerned, she looks like she's going to be quite affordable. And there's not, if we're looking at recent DPS sword releases, right? EOG is like the second best in slot on most characters. That's just how it's been. I don't see any reason to predict differently, and I'm pretty sure a similar case is going to happen over here. And second, if Xuanling is a Havoc Bane negative status character, following the release of Hiyuki, I think Kuro Games has finally figured negative statuses out. Back when Zani released, and by proxy, Cardathea as well, negative statuses had a very bad reputation. Because if you didn't have their intended teammate, bro, the character was functionally useless. You don't have Phoebe, this unit's basically useless. You don't have Cart, or you don't have Chakota, this unit's basically useless. If you don't have Lene, great, Hiyuki could just use Lucilla. If you don't have Lucilla, great, Hiyuki could just use Lene, and she's like, honestly, very comparable. She does more raw damage, but less negative status damage. But she works with both sub DPSs. And I think that's the main sort of like takeaway that we can have. Kuro's figured out how to make negative status units work without specified fucking teammates. and she can still get the job done, still get good clears, and still feel like a valuable character without having a specialized team. And as long as, right, Kuro Games takes that same sort of balancing lever, that same sort of like roster freedom, all of that, it's going to be way better. Is this game became more free to play? Yes. I don't really know what else to tell you. If a character like Hiyuki has more team options, the unit is more free to play friendly because you have less restrictions to getting them to clear content well. If a character only has one teammate and that one teammate only works with that one character, that is way less free to play friendly. That's way less affordable because now every unit needs their specific best in slot to function. But in this case, Hiyuki's best in slots work elsewhere. Her best in slot over here works on echo skill teams as well, right? And their best in slot over here works on almost every fucking team in the game. And so by building Hiyuki's best team, you can also build other best teams in the process. And hopefully Yangyang Xuanling will have a similar sort of like balancing in her numbers, balancing in her teammates, so that as you vertically invest in her team and stuff, you end up investing in others as well. And that would be the hope. And that actually kind of like leads us into another discussion over here. And that is going to be centered on, well, the other teammates that Yangyang has just by being a Havoc character. And these are some of the nice little bonuses that Yangyang is going to be coming with. Havoc is both a bad and like a good attribute. Main reason being that Havoc is one of the only attributes with a like very, very, very free to play sort of friendly buffer like Danjin. Danjin comes equipped with an outro skill that is less than of every other character in the game at only 23%, but it's just to all Havoc damage. And so regardless of what damage type Yangyang is going to be doing, Danjin should always be able to buff at least part of it. Because this is the really crazy thing about Havoc Bane that I haven't specified yet. Havoc Bane doesn't actually deal damage. Yes, Havoc Bane, all it does is reduce the target's defense by 2% per stack. So Havoc Bane in itself simply makes your regular attacks deal more damage. And so having an amplification, a general one on top of it that doesn't specify a damage type should by nature be pretty strong because you're combining it with defense reduction. And so unless Xuanling has some sort of way to like turn Havoc Bane into like its own DOT or some shit like that, then like, yeah, this is even like more synergy over here. That's a buff that only Havoc has. And by proxy Arrow, but you would have to use Alto, who's a piece of shit. Danjin is way better than Alto because on her S6, which most people have by now, she also buffs the entire team attack by 20%. Combine this with the Moonlit Clouds or some other stuff, right? Great, you got like a 45% attack team buffer. 45% team attack, team buffer, right? That then goes into and then amplifies your Havoc damage by 23 additional %. So that's looking pretty good. However, she's also got basically every other damage type in the game covered by some type of buffer as well. Except Resonance Skill. Resonance Skill is a little bit fucked, but... Oh, sorry. No. Havoc's also a great attribute if you're a DPS for a couple of reasons. Let me explain this. Let me explain this in great detail for you really quickly. Havoc has the amazing pleasure of being able to buff basically every single damage type in the game. Rosia buffs Havoc and basic attack damage by 45%. Cantarella buffs Havoc and skill damage by 45%. Frolova buffs Havoc and heavy attack by 45%. So the only one that doesn't seem to be covered here is Havoc and Liberation. But then great, you have Linnae who's just going to provide 40% by herself. So functionally, it seems like every possible damage type that Xuanling could be is covered by a premium outro. That's a big advantage to have as a Havoc DPS. No matter what fucking damage type you are, you should be able to get a strong buff on her, assuming you have some of the older limited Havoc units. Havoc is actually a lot better than you guys thought. We just haven't gotten a Havoc DPS in a really fucking long time. And so that's why a lot of the unrealized potential of these characters, it can buff almost every damage type in the game. We just haven't really seen it put into play yet outside of some of the Frolova teams. However, though, there's another dynamic we need to talk about. And that's the fact that when it comes to Yangyang and Suisui, they're sisters. Right? It's obvious they're sisters from the same family. And, well, the implication is that they're probably going to work together on the same team. That's what most people are thinking. Yangyang and Suisui are probably going to have some synergy, and they're probably going to work together, because if Augusta and Yuno were all about that, I wouldn't be surprised if these two were like kind of the exact same, right? It would just be odd if they didn't. And so I've already talked about this before in our Suisui overview. Now we're kind of transitioning over to her. It's very obvious from her kit. I think anyone with a fucking half-functioning brain can tell this is a support's kit. Yeah. I will say her, bro, she got some cannons. Bro, she has literal cannons compared to Yangyang. It's crazy.
Rippling splendor awakens. Holy fairies. Beyond lush haze, the rainflow marches.
She's a support. She's a support. I bet you this bitch does no damage, and all she does is buff, because she creates a goddamn field that probably just makes your damage go like crazy. Okay, I think it's very obvious she's meant to be the support. And what I've said before is that there's only one real archetype in the game currently that needs more supports. We don't need another Toon Break support. We've only got 3 Toon Break teams. It's Luke, Imeth, and of course, the Cyberpunk Edgerunner characters. You could maybe say we need another Toon support. Probably not, though. I feel like we're already adequately covered with what we have right now with Mornier. You could say we need another Echo skill support. Echo skill healer. That could definitely be like a thing, right? However, Shorekeeper's already holding down virtually every fucking Echo skill team in the game by herself. No issues at all. And then Frolova just runs with Cantarella. Galbraina uses her, Sigrinki uses her, and then Frolova uses Kanta. And then all the Echo skill teams are adequately covered right now. I don't think any of them feel like they need another healer. But guess which team feels like it needs another? Yeah. The teams where Chisa's your best in slot. Because I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it over and over again. Right now, negative statuses feel so shit in End State Matrix, it's unbelievable, because Chisa only has 1 vigor. And so the end result is that you can only play 1 negative status team here, when she's got 3 of them. She got the Cart team, the Imeth team, and of course, the Lucilla Hiyuki team. And when you're stretched that thin, and even if she had 2 vigor, you still had a 3rd negative status team where she's a best in slot in. That's really, really, really rough, isn't it? That's really, really, really a bit of a situation. And I think the main takeaway that people have discovered is that these are also the 3 most popular units in the game. Your Imeth, your Hiyuki, and of course, your Cardathea. Chances are, on average, I think most players pulled all 3 of them, because they've been the main pushes. The anniversary units and or the Sentinel Resonators. Most people probably have them. They're also all negative status units. So you have the 3 most owned units in the game. They all want this character as a support. You can kind of see how people are probably getting stretched thin, right? Most importantly, Chisa getting stretched thin, trying to support all 3 of these teams at once. And so it's kind of obvious, right? The archetype that needs the most help is negative statuses on the support side, and this is clearly a negative status-centered unit. Sorry, not a negative status-centered unit. Clearly a healing support-focused unit. And chances are, you would assume that she's negative status as well. Because for her to work alongside her potentially negative status Havoc Bane sister, she'd have to have some interaction with negative statuses, and it also happens to be the biggest hole in the goddamn roster that we need filled, that we've needed filled basically ever since Hiyuki came out. And of course, Denya alongside that, and then we tripled the number of negative status teams in the fucking game. It's a rough situation, right? And the best part about all of this is that because she's a rectifier user, and she's a support, this is probably going to be also one of the best free-to-play units in the game. And I'm going to say this as a rough estimation. I think she's going to be like 30 times more free-to-play friendly than Chisa, because probably all you're going to need to pull is her. Because we've seen it before already, ladies and gentlemen. We saw it with Mornier. We saw it with Shorekeeper. We see it with Bu Ling. We see it with Farina. Chisa's the odd one out. If you don't have Chisa Sig, she feels like half a character. Not gonna lie, you really want her Sig. But a Mornier without her Sig? She feels fine, bro. Who cares if Mornier doesn't have her Sig? Shorekeeper without her sig, who cares if she doesn't have her sig? You're just fine. You want to know why? Because you're just going to be able to use variation, ladies and gentlemen. There's no reason to even, like, discuss almost virtually any others, like, virtually any other options in the game. Variation, with its ability to restore up to 16 concerto energy and provide amazing ER stats. The only situation where we're maybe a little bit fucked is if her buffs are, like, dependent on her attack. And if that's the case, Suisui's buffs, like, scale off of her attack, and you need, like, high base attack to get her stuff going, then maybe you're a little bit cooked, right? Maybe you're a little bit fucked. But at least from what we've seen, these support units typically tend to, like, scale off of ER, and Kuro had a fantastic opportunity to fuck players up by making Mornier not scale off ER, make Discord useless, and then, of course, make her signature super, super, super necessary. A bit like Chisa, right? But they didn't. And so, you're likely going to be able to just pick up a copy of this character, much like you did Mornier. Much like your Shorekeepers, you just pick up a copy of the character, S0. You don't even think about pulling the weapon. You stick a concerto weapon on them, and then you go about your fucking day, and you have a good life. Chisa, unfortunately, wasn't the character that could do that, because on her release, if you didn't pull her signature, she was worse than Arrow Rover in her only team. She was a downgrade to Arrow Rover in the Cart team, Chakota team, if you didn't pull her sig. That's likely not going to be the case for Suisui. Or you would hope. There's also this other possibility out there that, like, some people have been throwing it around already. What if she just uses this piece of shit? I don't think so, because to activate this, you need to use a Tomb Break. Yeah, it also grants just a basic attack damage boost. It does nothing for your supportive abilities. This literally is like a DPS thing. It's like a pseudo DPS thing. Everyone can cast it. Great. It's awesome that everyone can cast it. All this does is give personal damage buffs. In what universe would, like, did you guys even, like, read this, or did you just look at the ER stat and you're like, oh wow, it gives ER, it must be a support? Yeah, bro, the 12% basic attack damage is gonna change everything. You're right, this 12% attack and 12% basic attack damage is gonna change everything, guys. What, like, you just have to know, like, at least basic numbers in this game, and you would know this shit is useless. I'll put money. Hey, if she ends up using Bow Saw and Astrolabe, bro, I'll give 10 subs to myself. I don't think she's gonna fucking use that shit. I think it's gonna be her sig or variation, and you're probably gonna want to use variation. However, though, we do need to just take a look at some of the existing rectifier options just to truly be 100%, right? Because you might be in for a couple of discoveries. Namely being this. If Suisui's resident skill heals, she might be able to use this. You never know. However, part of me is thinking Suisui's resident skill is going to be intentionally designed to not heal, so that you don't run into any situations over here. But other than that, these are all DPS. These are all, like, DPS-oriented fucking rectifiers. Literally, all of them, except for Shorekeeper, is, like, sub-DPS or DPS-coded. And then it's variation. So yeah, we'll just have to see. Kuro Games can obviously easily take a more Chisa-focused approach to this support character, where they end up needing a lot of investment on, like, the stat side, a lot of investment on, like, the weapon side for them to function properly, because a big part of what Chisa provides to teams, guys, is her personal damage. Characters like Mornier, characters like Shorekeeper, they sacrifice their personal damage, need almost no real investment on the Echo side, and can just go with the Concerto weapon and then fuck shit up. She can't. She needs good investment, she needs good Echoes and stuff like that. She's kind of an expensive support. And that's one of the other bigger bonuses, right? Of a character more like a Mornier, a character more like a Shorekeeper. Bro, I spend almost no resources building these characters' Echoes. Like, this is a best-in-slot Mornier Echo. It's got one usable substat, and because it's ER, it's a best-in-slot Mornier Echo. This is what I mean. The difference between this and a 5 out of 5 piece on your Mornier is like 0.01% team DPS. And it's awesome having units where you can literally give them poverty-level investment, and then they perform at 99% efficiency. Those are nice to have on the roster. And if Suisui happens to have all of those characteristics, she's a must-pull. She is a must-pull, and she will probably actually be the negative status of Shorekeepers. Now, on this whole negative status idea, assuming that's what's in her kit, I'd have to think that she applies Glacial Chafe as well. Maybe a little bit of it, maybe a lot, who knows? But I wouldn't be surprised if she also applies Glacial Chafe, because she would need to for Hiyuki's Snow Rest passive to activate. She would need to. And if she doesn't, then Hiyuki would be stuck at 2 stacks in a negative status team. And so, if she's negative status, she has to apply Glacial Chafe. She has to apply the defect. Or she has to apply the debuff. Otherwise, it's just the synergy is already fucking cooked, because Hiyuki needs an independent teammate who's able to apply their own stack, or she's just going to be missing one of these. So yeah, that's just another thing to keep in mind. And of course, now it makes a lot more sense why she's Glacial. Right? Because I'm pretty sure they also wanted to, assuming she's negative status, right, put in that assurance that she would work with Hiyuki, given some of Hiyuki's more restrictive application measures. That's going to be our overview for these units over here. And you're probably coming to the same conclusion that I am based off the discussion. These two have potential to be some of the most free-to-play friendly units that we've had in the history of the game. And I heavily suggest this to all players. You take a look at your expenditures, you take a look at your pull income, and you start saving. I genuinely see a future where you pull these two, and then you suddenly are like set for like a good portion of the future updates. Because, and this might throw you off, maybe Kuro's decided they want players to have some pattern recognition. If you're somebody that pulled Linné and Mornier in 3.0, bro, you was set for the rest of 3.x. If you pulled those two characters in 3.0, bro, you could like, you were so set for the rest of 3.x, you could like pull whoever you wanted. You were having like a good time. And if history repeats itself, and hey, you decide to pull Yangyang and Suisui, and then you feel really, really, really good for the rest of 3.x, that would be a nice bonus as well, right? A way better bonus, because this is the thing. Assuming Suisui is a negative status support, bro, she's gonna be releasing into a way better game than Chisa 2. Because you're gonna be able to have 1 team, 2 team, 3 team, right? And potentially 4 teams with her sister. And that's a lot better than Chisa being like a 5% DPS upgrade over the completely free Arrow Rover. Oh, sorry. There potentially 5 teams. Because as far as we know, right, with the way that Suisui's kit turns out, maybe she actually makes Spectral Frazzle playable. Without, like Spectral Frazzle playable in an actual negative status team. That could also happen, too. Who fucking knows? Or, like, DPS Phoebe works with her. You know what I mean, right? Because we all know Spectral Frazzle, if you try playing it with Chisa, you are... like, fucking, like, rest in peace, bro. Like, if you try to play Spectral Frazzle with this bitch, you done, bro. Your shit is cooked. What's clear is that negative statuses are something that Kuro's been focusing on a lot more recently. Would not be surprised if these two characters lead that sort of stuff moving forward. And their place in the meta is so much stronger than what it was a couple of years ago. Or not even years, a couple of months ago. That I think most people can actually view negative statuses now as like a positive add to the game. Which is ironic. And I think that's one of the biggest things we need to congratulate Kuro Games for, is the literal glow up, the literal 180 that debuffs have had in like the past like 6 fucking months, because they fixed them. They fixed them. And I think what's probably next on the calendar, and I would love to see this moving forward. Bro, I'd love to see them rework Kart's kit, and I'd love to see them rework Zodi and Phoebe's kit. Like, I don't even think people would be mad at this point if they kind of reworked both of these two characters to make them less reliant on their teammates and, like, just more like Hiyuki. And would anyone care? I don't think anyone would care if they just made these two units more like fucking Hiyuki. It's not hard. It wouldn't destroy anything, and more people would just end up pulling them later because you'd have more teams to play. When you look at the stuff surrounding this game, you can kind of tell what's going to end up happening. My personal advice is just make sure if you're going to pull one unit across this patch and you had to only choose between one of these two, because of her potential insane free-to-play value, I'd go for her. Because if you could just get her up and running on a variation and hobo gear, you're going to be having a great time. So yeah, I would say if you only one person to choose, yo. I just spilled coffee, but now you know. If you only have one person to choose, go for her. That'll be it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you all thought. Peace out.